The explosions shook the walls of station again. Corporal Jake pressed himself against the metal corridor and tried to catch his breath. His radio crackled with static and broken voices. Somewhere in that noise, Commander Lisa Grant was ordering all units to evacuate. The station would explode in 90 minutes. Jake ran through the smoke-filled hallways. His unit had already left on the first shuttle. He was supposed to be with them. But when the forces broke through Sector 7, everything went wrong. Now he was alone, searching for any humans who might still be alive in this dying station. They had hit them hard. The insect-like aliens with their 6 limbs and crystal bodies were winning this war. Earth's forces were retreating across the galaxy. Station was just another loss in a long line of defeats. Jake turned a corner and stopped. The civilian sector ahead was completely destroyed. Metal beams had fallen everywhere. Fires burned in small pockets throughout the area. The station's artificial gravity flickered on and off, making debris float and then crash down again. He should turn back. His orders were clear. Get to the evacuation point. Get off this station before it exploded. But then he heard something that made him freeze. A child was crying. Jake moved forward carefully. The sound came from under a collapsed wall section. He pulled out his scanner and checked for life signs. There, buried under metal and broken equipment, something was alive. But the scanner showed a reading he did not expect. It was not human. He should leave. Every second he stayed here brought him closer to death. The last shuttle would depart in 40 minutes. If he missed it, he would die when the station exploded. But that crying sound continued, scared and hurt and alone. Jake began moving debris. The metal was hot from fires nearby. His gloves protected his hands but barely. He worked fast, throwing aside pieces of wall and broken furniture. The crying got louder. Then he saw her, a small child, maybe 5 years old in human terms. She was trapped under a heavy beam. Her crystalline body flickered with lights that pulsed in patterns. Jake had seen intelligence reports about biology. Those light patterns meant extreme fear. The child's eyes fixed on him. She stopped crying and went very still. Jake knew what she was thinking. Humans and were enemies. She expected him to hurt her or leave her to die. Jake knelt down beside the trapped child. He spoke softly even though she probably did not understand English. "It's okay. I'm going to help you." He examined her injuries carefully. The beam had crushed her lower body. 2 of her 6 limbs were bent at wrong angles. She needed medical attention fast. Jake opened his field kit and pulled out supplies. The station shook with another explosion, closer this time. The child made a scared sound. Jake put his hand gently on her shoulder. "I've got you, just stay calm." He worked quickly, using his training as a combat medic. He gave her something for the pain through an injection port on her arm. The medicine was designed for humans, but biology was similar enough that it should work. The child's light patterns shifted slightly. The fear colors faded a little. Jake positioned himself and began lifting the beam. His muscles screamed with effort. The beam was too heavy for one person, but he had to try. He lifted harder, his face red with strain. The beam shifted up an inch, then another. The child pulled herself free with her working limbs. Jake let the beam fall and grabbed her before she could collapse. She was light, barely 50 pounds. Her crystal body felt strange against his armor, hard and smooth and warm. The child looked up at him. Her lights pulsed with new colors. Jake did not know what they meant, but something in those alien eyes seemed almost human. Gratitude, maybe, or just relief that someone had stopped to help. His radio came alive. Commander Grant's voice was sharp and urgent. "Where are you? The last shuttle leaves in 35 minutes. Get to the evacuation point now." Jake pressed the radio button. "I found a survivor, Commander, civilian. I need to get them to safety." There was a pause. "Is it human?" Jake looked at the small alien in his arms. He should lie. He should say yes and deal with the problem later, but he had never been good at lying. "Negative, Commander, it's a child. She's injured and scared." The silence that followed was heavy. When Grant spoke again, her voice was cold. "Leave it. That's an order. Get to the point immediately." "Commander, she's just a kid. She's the enemy, and you're going to die if you don't move now. We're not sacrificing a shuttle for an alien." The radio went silent. Jake looked down at the child. She was watching him with those strange eyes. Did she understand that he was supposed to abandon her? Did she know that his own people wanted him to let her die? Jake made his decision. He started moving toward the evacuation zone, carrying the child. She wrapped her good limbs around him and held on tight. Her light patterns pulsed against his chest. They made it 3 corridors before the soldiers appeared. There were 4 of them, all armed with energy weapons. They saw Jake immediately, and they saw what he was carrying. The soldiers started making clicking sounds, their way of communicating. Jake did not need a translator to know they were angry. One soldier raised its weapon. Jake turned and ran. Energy blasts cut through the air behind him. The walls melted where the shots hit. Jake dodged left, then right, moving on pure instinct. The child held onto him with surprising strength. Her lights were flashing rapidly now, bright pulses of color that lit up the dark corridor. More soldiers appeared ahead. Jake was trapped between 2 groups. He spotted a side passage and dove through it. An energy blast missed his head by inches. He ran faster than he ever had in his life. His lungs burned. His legs felt like they would give out. But he kept going, the child's weight in his arms a constant reminder of why he was risking everything. The soldiers chased him through the dying station. Their clicking communications echoed off the walls. Jake's radio came alive again. Commander Grant was shouting orders, demanding to know his position. He ignored her. He rounded a corner and found himself in a cargo bay, dead end. The soldiers would be here in seconds. Jake looked around desperately for another exit. There was nothing. Then he saw it, an emergency hatch leading to the maintenance tunnels. Jake ran for it and pulled it open. He climbed inside with the child and sealed the hatch behind them. The space was barely big enough for both of them. Through the hatch he heard the soldiers enter the cargo bay. They searched the area, their clicking voices frustrated. After a long minute they moved on. Jake sat in the dark tunnel, holding the alien child. His heart pounded so hard he thought it might burst. The child's lights had dimmed to a soft glow. She was looking at him again with those strange eyes. Jake checked his watch. 20 minutes until the last shuttle departed. He was on the wrong side of the station with no clear path to the evacuation point, and he was carrying an enemy soldier's child through a war zone. He had made his choice. Now he had to live with it, or die with it. Jake crawled through the maintenance tunnel with the alien child pressed against his chest. The space was narrow and dark. His armor scraped against the metal walls with every movement. Behind them, he could still hear the soldiers searching. The child made small sounds that might have been words in her language. Jake whispered back even though she could not understand. "We're going to be okay. Just stay quiet." He checked his map display. The evacuation point was 4 sectors away. The maintenance tunnels could get them there, but it would take time. Too much time. His watch showed 15 minutes until the last shuttle departed. They crawled for what felt like hours but was probably only 5 minutes. The tunnel opened into a ventilation shaft. Jake helped the child up and looked around. They were in Sector 3, close to the station's core. Fires burned everywhere. The air tasted like smoke and melted plastic. His radio crackled. "This is your final warning. The shuttle leaves in 10 minutes. If you're not here, you're staying behind." Jake grabbed the radio. "Commander, I'm in Sector 3. I can't make it in time." "Then leave the alien and run. You might still have a chance." Jake looked at the child. She was watching him with those bright eyes. Her light patterns had changed to softer colors. Trust, maybe. She thought he would protect her. "Negative, Commander. I'm not leaving her." Grant's voice turned angry. "Then you're a dead man. I'm sorry, but I can't hold the shuttle for you. We have 60 people on board who need to get out alive." "I understand, Commander. Take care of the unit for me." The radio went silent. Jake clipped it back to his belt and looked at the child. "Looks like it's just you and me now." They moved through the burning station. Jake avoided the main corridors where patrols searched. He used maintenance shafts and service tunnels, paths that few people knew existed. His training as a medic had taught him to memorize station layouts. That knowledge was saving both their lives now. In a damaged storage room, Jake found supplies. He grabbed water, emergency rations, and a small medical kit. The child watched him work. When he opened a ration pack, she made an interested sound. He broke off a piece and offered it to her. She hesitated, then took the food with careful movements. She ate slowly, testing the taste. Human food was probably strange to her, but she was hungry enough not to care. Jake ate too. They sat together in the quiet storage room while the station fell apart around them. It felt surreal. Yesterday, he had been shooting at soldiers. Today, he was sharing his lunch with one of their children. The station shook with a massive explosion. Alarms blared throughout the corridors. The evacuation point must have been destroyed. Even if Jake had made it there, the shuttle was gone now. He was truly stuck. The child touched his arm with one of her good limbs. Her lights pulsed in question patterns. Jake realized she was asking if he was okay. Even through all the fear and pain, this small alien was worried about him. "Yeah," he said softly. "I'm okay. We just need a new plan." Jake pulled up his map again. There had to be another way off the station. Emergency escape pods. Every station had them in case of catastrophic failure. He searched the map until he found what he needed. Section 9 had a pod bay with 6 small escape craft. The problem was getting there. Section 9 was on the other side of the station. Between them and safety were multiple patrol zones and areas of heavy damage. It would be dangerous even without carrying an injured child. But what choice did they have? In 60 minutes, this entire station would explode. If they stayed here, they would die. Jake stood up and picked up the child. She settled against him, her limbs wrapping around his body. He could feel her heart beating fast against his chest, or whatever had instead of hearts. They moved through the station like ghosts. Jake used every trick he knew to stay hidden. He moved during alarm cycles when the noise covered their footsteps. He checked corners before turning them. He stayed in the shadows and avoided open spaces. Twice, they almost ran into patrols. Jake hid them both in darkened rooms and waited, barely breathing, until the soldiers passed. The child stayed perfectly still during these moments. She seemed to understand that silence meant survival. In Sector 7, they found bodies, human and alike, killed in the fighting. The child made a sad sound when she saw the dead soldiers. Jake wondered if she knew any of them. Maybe one was her parent or a family member. He kept moving. There was no time for grief. They reached Section 9 with 20 minutes remaining. The escape pod bay was damaged but still functional. Jake ran to the control panel and activated the launch sequence for Pod 3. Lights flickered on inside the small craft. The pod was designed for 2 adult humans. It would be cramped with him and the child, but it was their only option. Jake strapped them both into the single seat, the child on his lap. He sealed the hatch and programmed a course toward neutral space. Through the pod's viewport, he watched the station. Ships moved in the distance, searching through debris fields. They were looking for something. Looking for her, Jake realized. The military was tearing apart space to find this one child. Who was she? Why was she so important? The pod launched with a violent jolt. They shot away from station at maximum speed. Jake held the child tight as the acceleration pressed them both back into the seat. She made scared sounds but did not fight him. Behind them, station began its final destruction. Massive explosions tore through the structure. Metal twisted and melted. Entire sections broke apart and floated away into space. The station that had been a human home for 20 years died in minutes. The pod's small engine cut out. They were now drifting in space, running on minimal power to avoid detection. Jake programmed the computer to stay quiet and cold. The ships would not find them if they looked like just another piece of debris. The child shifted in his arms. She was looking at him again. Her lights pulsed in slow patterns. Without thinking, Jake started humming. It was an old song his mother used to sing when he was small. He did not remember the words anymore, just the tune. The child's lights changed rhythm. They pulsed in time with his humming. It was almost like she was singing along. Days passed slowly in the cramped escape pod. Jake shared his rations with the child. He learned that she could eat some human food, but not all of it. Protein bars made her sick. Dried fruit she actually liked. He treated her injuries properly with the medical kit. The broken limbs were healing, though slowly. Biology was different from human, but the basic principles were the same. Set the bones straight. Keep the wounds clean. Give the body time to heal. The child started responding to his voice. When he talked, her lights pulsed in answer. When he was quiet, she would touch his arm like she was asking what was wrong. They could not speak each other's languages, but they were learning to communicate. She drew pictures in the condensation on the viewport, crude stick figures that showed her family. Jake counted 6 figures, all with the distinctive 6 limbs of bodies. She pointed to the smallest figure and then to herself. Then she pointed to the largest figure and made a sound that might have been a name. Jake drew his own picture. 2 figures, both human, his parents. He pointed to himself in the drawing. The child touched the picture gently, like she understood loss and loneliness. On the 4th day, a ship appeared on their sensors. Jake's heart raced. Was it human, or he checked the pod systems? They were still running cold and quiet. The ship should not be able to detect them. But the ship changed course. It was heading straight for their position. Jake held the child close and waited. There was nothing else he could do. The pod had no weapons. If the ship wanted to destroy them, they would die. If it wanted to capture them, they would be captured. The ship matched velocity with their pod. Through the viewport, Jake saw markings he did not recognize. Not human. Not something else entirely. The ship's docking clamp attached to their pod with a heavy thud. Moments later, the airlock began to open. Jake positioned himself between the child and whatever was coming through that door. The airlock finished cycling. A figure stepped into view. It was tall and thin, covered in flowing robes. Its face was hidden behind a translator mask. When it spoke, the words came out in perfect English. Corporal Jake of Earth Defense Forces, Princess of the Empire, you are both wanted by the Galactic Council. Please come with us peacefully. Jake stared at the alien, Princess. The child in his arms was royalty. He looked down at her. She looked back at him with those trusting eyes. Her lights pulsed in patterns he had learned to recognize. She was scared but felt safe with him. Jake stood up slowly, still holding the child. We'll come peacefully, just don't hurt her. The robed figure tilted its head. Corporal, we mean neither of you harm. The Council has been searching for Princess since the battle. Her loss has pushed 2 species closer to total war. But now that she is found alive and protected by a human soldier, the situation has changed dramatically. Jake stepped through the airlock into the alien ship. He had saved the child's life. He had kept her safe for 4 days in an escape pod. He had done what he thought was right. Now he was about to learn that doing the right thing sometimes came with consequences no one could predict. The Council ship brought them to Sanctuary Station, a massive structure that floated in neutral space. Jake had heard about the station but never thought he would see it. This was where different alien species met to discuss politics and trade. This was where wars were prevented or started with words instead of weapons. Guards met them at the docking bay. They were polite but firm. They took Princess from Jake's arms despite her distressed sounds. Her lights flashed in patterns that Jake now recognized as fear and anger. She reached for him, her small limbs stretching toward the human who had protected her. "It's okay," Jake told her, even though he did not know if that was true. "I'll see you soon." The guards led Jake to a set of quarters. The room was comfortable with a soft bed, clean bathroom, and a window showing the stars outside. But the door locked behind him with a heavy click. He was a prisoner, even if they called him a guest. Within hours, a human woman entered his quarters. She was in her 50s with gray hair and sharp eyes. Her uniform showed her rank as ambassador. "Corporal, I'm Ambassador Helen Cross. I represent Earth's interests on the Galactic Council." Jake stood at attention. "Ma'am." "At ease, soldier." Helen sat down and gestured for him to do the same. "We need to talk about what you've done. Do you understand the situation you're in?" "Not really, ma'am. I just saved a kid." Helen sighed. "That kid is Princess, only daughter of Matriarch N. The Matriarch is the supreme ruler of the Empire. When went missing during the battle, they blamed us. They said we killed her or took her hostage. They were preparing to launch total war against humanity." Jake felt cold. "I didn't know who she was." "I believe you, but that doesn't change what's happened. The delegation is demanding we turn you over to them for trial. By their laws, touching royal blood without permission is a capital crime. It doesn't matter that you saved her life. You contaminated their princess with your presence." "That's insane." "That's their culture." Helen leaned forward. "On the other hand, Earth wants to use you as propaganda. The hero medic who saved an enemy child despite orders to evacuate. We could use your story to show that humans have honor and compassion, but that would make you a target for both sides." Jake thought about the small alien child with her flickering lights and trusting eyes. "What happens to?" "She'll be returned to her mother. The matriarch is already on her way to the station." "And what happens to me?" Helen looked tired. "That's what the council hearing will decide. It starts in 2 hours." The council chamber was enormous. Representatives from 47 different alien species sat in a circular arrangement. Jake stood in the center, feeling very small and very human. He wore his combat uniform, still dirty from the battle and escape. Ambassador Cross stood beside him. Across the chamber, the delegation occupied a large section. Their crystalline bodies caught the light and threw rainbow patterns across the walls. At their head was Lord On, an imposing figure who radiated authority and anger. The council chair, a floating being made of light and energy, began the hearing. Its translated voice echoed through the chamber. "We gather to decide the fate of Corporal Jake, human, who stands accused of unlawful contact with royalty." Lord On stood. "The human committed a grave crime against the Empire. He touched Princess without permission. He contaminated royal blood with his inferior presence. By our laws, death is the only acceptable punishment." Ambassador Cross responded. "Corporal is a combat medic. His duty is to save lives, regardless of species. He found an injured child and protected her when he could have abandoned her. This shows humanity's commitment to honor and compassion." "It shows human arrogance," On shot back. "The human assumed he had the right to touch what belongs to the people. He had no authority. He should have left the princess to be found by her own kind." "She would have died," Jake said quietly. The chamber went silent. All eyes turned to him. The council chair spoke. "The human wishes to address the council." Jake looked at Ambassador Cross. She nodded slightly. He stepped forward. Princess was trapped under debris. She was injured and scared. The station was going to explode. I'm a medic. When I see someone hurt, I help them. It doesn't matter if they're human or alien or my enemy. A child was dying and I had the power to save her, so I did." "You had orders to evacuate," On said coldly. "You disobeyed your commanders." "Yes, sir, I did." "You risked your own life for an enemy." I risked my life for a child who didn't choose to be part of this war. On's lights flashed with anger. You dare to lecture us about war? Your species has killed thousands of soldiers. And your species has killed thousands of humans. But that little girl didn't kill anyone. She was just scared and hurt, and she needed help. The council chamber erupted in discussion. Different species argued in different languages. The translator system struggled to keep up with all the voices. The council chair called for order. We will hear from the princess herself. Guards brought Princess into the chamber. She looked small and frightened, surrounded by so many adults, but she walked with her head up, her lights pulsing in steady patterns. The council chair spoke gently to her. Princess, can you tell us what happened on station? Through a translator, the child's voice filled the chamber. I was with my teacher in the civilian section. The battle started. There were explosions. The building fell down. I was trapped and it hurt so much. I thought I would die there. And then what happened? The human found me. He was big and scary at first. I thought he would kill me because that's what the adults say humans do. But he didn't. He was gentle. He gave me medicine for the pain. He freed me from the metal that was crushing me. Lights pulsed with emotion as she continued. The station was falling apart. There were fires and more explosions. The human carried me and protected me. When things fell down, he covered me with his body. When we had to hide from soldiers, he kept me quiet and safe. When we floated in space in that tiny pod, he shared his food even though there wasn't much. He sang to me when I was scared. The princess looked directly at Jake. I didn't understand his words, but I understood his heart. He was not my enemy, he was my protector. The chamber was silent. Even Lord On seemed affected by the child's words. She continued speaking, her voice stronger now. The adults teach us that humans are monsters without honor. But this human had more honor than many of our own soldiers. He could have left me to die. He could have used me as a hostage. He could have hurt me. He did none of those things. He just helped me because helping is what good people do. The council chair thanked the princess. She was led out, but not before she looked back at Jake one more time. Her lights pulsed with affection and gratitude. The council began deliberating. Jake stood in the center of the chamber and waited. His future was being decided by aliens who barely understood human culture. He might be executed or imprisoned or sent back to Earth. He had no control over any of it. Then the doors to the chamber burst open. Every being in the room turned to look. A new figure entered, towering and magnificent. Her crystalline body was covered in ceremonial armor that shone with embedded jewels. Her presence filled the room with authority so heavy it was almost physical. Matriarch N had arrived. The ruler walked to the center of the chamber. Others made way for her, bowing their heads in respect. She stopped directly in front of Jake. He forced himself not to step back, not to show fear, even though every instinct told him to run. N looked at him with multiple eyes. She was studying him like a scientist examining an interesting specimen. When she spoke, her voice was deep and commanding. The translator rendered her words in cold English. You are the human who touched my daughter. Yes, ma'am, I mean, Your Majesty, I mean. Jake stopped himself. Yes. You should have left her to die. I couldn't do that. Why not? You are human, we are at war. Jake met her eyes. Because she's a child, and children shouldn't die for wars they didn't start. N was quiet for a long moment. Then she turned to address the council. My advisors demand this human's execution. My military leaders want to make an example of him. My people cry for justice. She paused, letting her words sink in. But I am matriarch. I saw my daughter's face when she spoke of this human. I saw trust and affection. My child survived because a human soldier chose mercy over orders. He chose life over war. N turned back to Jake. By the laws of my people, you committed a crime. But by the older laws, the ancient codes from before we reached the stars, you created a debt. You saved royal blood. That debt cannot be paid with your death." The matriarch raised her voice so all could hear. "I invoke the ancient right of life debt. This human saved my daughter. He is now bound to my household until the debt is satisfied." The chamber erupted again. Lord On stood in shock. Ambassador Cross grabbed Jake's arm. "What does that mean?" Jake asked her. Helen's face was pale. "It means she's claiming you. You're no longer a soldier of Earth. You belong to the Empire now." Jake looked at the matriarch. N's expression was unreadable. He had saved a child's life. And now that act of mercy had cost him everything he knew. His freedom, his life on Earth, his identity as a human. The matriarch spoke again. "The human will come to Aura Hour. He will serve as Princess Guardian. This is my command." The council chair asked the question everyone was thinking. "And if he refuses?" N's lights flashed once, bright and sharp. "Then he will face trial for his crime and be executed as our laws demand. The choice is his. Come with me and live. Refuse and die." Jake stood in the center of the chamber with every eye upon him. He thought about Earth, about his family, about the life he would lose. And he thought about a small alien child who trusted him completely. He had already made his choice days ago when he decided not to leave her. The council chamber descended into chaos after Matriarch N's announcement. Ambassador Cross was shouting at other human delegates. The representatives were clicking and chittering in their own language. Species from across the galaxy argued about ancient laws and modern politics. Jake stood perfectly still in the center of it all. The matriarch had given him a choice, but it was not really a choice at all. Accept her claim and live as property of the Empire. Refuse and be executed for touching a princess. Either way, his life as a human soldier was over. The council chair called for order. It took several minutes for the noise to die down. An ancient alien species called the Archivists were brought forward to explain the law N had invoked. The chief archivist was a small being that looked like it was made of old paper and dried leather. It spoke in a whispering voice that the translators amplified. "Is one of the oldest traditions. It dates back over 3,000 years to before they left there. The word means life debt in the old language." "What does it mean in practice?" the council chair asked. "When someone saves the life of royalty, they become bound to that royal's household. In ancient times, this meant they became servants. They would spend their lives serving the royal they saved. The tradition has not been invoked in modern history. We do not know exactly how it would apply today." Ambassador Cross stepped forward. "This is absurd. Jake is a soldier of Earth. He has rights. He has a family. He cannot be claimed like property by an alien government." Lord On responded coldly. "The human committed a crime under law. He should face punishment. The matriarch offers mercy through. He should be grateful." "Grateful? She's taking away his freedom. She's offering him his life. The alternative is execution. Those are the only options under our law." The argument continued. Jake stopped listening. He looked around the chamber at all these powerful beings deciding his fate. None of them really cared about him. He was just a piece on a political game board. Finally, the council chair made a ruling. Corporal must make his choice within one solar cycle. He may accept the matriarch's claim under or face trial for his crime. The council will respect either decision. Jake was led back to his quarters. Ambassador Cross came with him. As soon as the door closed, she started talking fast. "We're getting you out of here. Earth Command is preparing an extraction team. In 12 hours, a stealth ship will dock with the station. We'll get you to safety before the matriarch can stop us." "That would start a war," Jake said quietly. "Maybe, but we can't let them take you. You're a human citizen. You have rights." Jake sat down on the bed. He felt very tired. "I saved a kid's life, Helen. How did that turn into this?" Helen's expression softened. "You did the right thing, Jake. but sometimes doing the right thing has consequences nobody expects. After she left, Jake sat alone with his thoughts. Through the window, he could see ships docked at the station. Somewhere on one of those ships was the matriarch, waiting for his answer. And somewhere else was Princess, probably scared and confused about why she had been separated from the human who protected her. There was a sound at his door. Jake turned, expecting guards. Instead, a small figure slipped inside. Princess had somehow escaped her minders. The child ran to Jake and wrapped her limbs around him. Her lights pulsed with relief. Jake held her gently, surprised by how much he had missed her presence. "How did you get here?" he asked, knowing she would not understand. Pulled back and showed him something she had been carrying. It was a small sculpture made of crystal, roughly shaped but clearly made with care. It showed two figures, one human and one, standing side by side. She pointed to the sculpture, then to Jake, then to herself. She said something in her language that sounded like a question. Jake understood. She was asking if he would stay with her. "I don't know," he said honestly. "It's complicated." The princess set down her sculpture and pulled out a small device. She pressed buttons until a translation program activated. Her voice came through the speaker in broken English. "Please stay. Mother angry, but mother loves me. She knows you good. She will not hurt you, please." "It's not that simple. If I go with you, I can never go home. I'll never see my family again. I'll be trapped in a place where everyone sees me as the enemy." Thought about this. Her young face showed concentration as she formed English words. "You trapped here too. They say you die or you come. No other choice. Better come. Better alive." The simple logic of a child, but she was right. Those were his only real options. Before Jake could respond, the door opened again. Matriarch N entered, her presence filling the small room. She saw her daughter and made a sharp clicking sound, lowered her head but did not leave Jake's side. The matriarch spoke, and the translation device rendered her words. "Daughter, you were told to stay in your quarters." "I needed to see him," said in her own language. "He is scared. I wanted to help." N's multiple eyes fixed on Jake. "Leave us, daughter. I must speak with the human alone." Hesitated, then gave Jake one last look before leaving. The matriarch watched her go, then turned back to Jake. She touched a control on her armor, and suddenly she was speaking in English without a translator. "You speak English?" Jake asked, surprised. "I have been studying your species for years. Know your enemy, as your people say. I speak 7 human languages." N moved to the window and looked out at the stars. "You are wondering why I invoked." The thought crossed my mind. My advisors wanted you executed. My military leaders wanted to make a public example of you. Show the humans what happens when they dare touch royalty. But I saw something different in my daughter's eyes. N turned to face him. "Has been taught since birth that humans are monsters, that your species is violent and cruel and without honor. Every child in my empire learns the same lessons. We teach them to hate you before they even understand what hate means." "We teach our children the same about you," Jake admitted. "Yes, and that is why this war will never end unless something changes. Both our species are locked in a cycle of hatred. We fight because we fought yesterday. We will fight tomorrow because we fight today. Generation after generation, the hate grows stronger." The matriarch sat down, a surprisingly human gesture. "Then my daughter was trapped on a dying station. She should have died there, but a human saved her, not because he had orders, not because he wanted something from us. He saved her simply because she was a child in danger. My daughter came back to me speaking of this human with trust and affection." "Where are you going with this?" Jake asked. "I need to end this war. I have been trying to find a path to peace for months, but every time I propose negotiations, my military council blocks me. They say humans cannot be trusted. They say your species only understands violence. They show me reports of human attacks and human cruelty, and I cannot argue against evidence. and leaned forward. But then you appeared, a human who chose mercy over orders, a human who protected a child at great personal cost, a human who proves that your species is capable of compassion and honor. You are the evidence I need to show my people that peace is possible. Jake began to understand. Isn't about claiming me as property, it's about politics. Is about survival, yours and possibly both our species. If you come to Aura, if you live among my people as guardian, you become a symbol. You prove that humans and can coexist. You give me the tool I need to change public opinion and push for peace. And if I refuse, then you die, and my military council gets their example of human dishonor. They will use your execution to fuel the war. More humans will die, more will die. The cycle continues. Jake stood and paced the small room. You're asking me to give up everything. My home, my family, my identity. You want me to live in enemy territory surrounded by people who hate me. You want me to become a propaganda tool. Yes, I am asking you to sacrifice your life as you knew it. It is not fair. It is not right, but it may be necessary. N's voice was quiet but firm. You saved one child. Now I am asking you to help save millions on both sides. What if it doesn't work? What if your people refuse to accept me? What if they kill me anyway? That is a risk. I will protect you as much as I can. You will have status as royal guardian and my personal protection, but I cannot guarantee your safety. There are those in my empire who would rather see you dead than see peace with humans. Jake thought about Commander Grant's offer, the extraction team that would take him back to Earth. He could refuse the matriarch and wait for rescue, but how many would die in the fighting that followed? How many children on both sides would lose parents because he chose the easy path? He thought about crystal sculpture, two figures standing together. It was such a simple image, such an impossible dream. If I do this, Jake said slowly, I need your word that you'll actually work for peace, that this isn't just a trick to neutralize me while you continue the war. You have my word as matriarch. I swear on my daughter's life that I seek genuine peace between our species. Jake looked at the powerful alien leader. She met his gaze without flinching. He thought about all the ways this could go wrong, all the dangers he would face, all the things he would lose. And he thought about a scared child trapped under debris, reaching out for help. I'll do it, Jake said. I'll come to Aura. I'll be the princess's guardian. I'll help you show your people that humans can be trusted. N stood. For a moment, something like respect crossed her alien features. You are either very brave or very foolish. Probably both. The matriarch moved toward the door, then paused. One more thing, human. My daughter trusts you completely. She believes you will protect her from any threat. Do not prove her wrong. I won't. After N left, Jake sat alone again. He had made his choice. In the morning, he would tell Ambassador Cross that he was refusing extraction. He would accept and travel to the... He would become the first human to voluntarily enter enemy space. He picked up crystal sculpture and held it carefully. It was rough and simple, made by a child's hands, but somehow it represented everything Jake hoped to achieve. Two species standing together instead of fighting, peace instead of war, understanding instead of hate. It was a small dream, maybe an impossible one, but Jake had already proven that small acts could have large consequences. He had saved one child and changed the entire political landscape. Maybe he could do more. He had to believe he could, because the alternative was going back to Earth while the war continued and more children died on both sides, and Jake knew he could not live with that choice. So he would go to Aura. He would be a guardian and a symbol and a bridge between species, and he would hope that one human's courage could help end a war that had already cost too many lives. The matriarch's flagship broke through the atmosphere of Aura, and Jake saw the alien for the first time. Cities of living crystal grew from the planet's surface like enormous trees. Each structure pulsed with light, creating patterns that shifted and changed. Millions of moved through their daily lives far below. Jake stood at the viewport with Princess beside him. She pointed excitedly at different landmarks, speaking rapidly in her language. Jake understood maybe one word in 10 now. He had been studying during the journey, but the language was difficult. The ship landed at the royal palace, a massive structure that towered over the city. Guards lined the landing platform, their weapons visible and ready. As Jake stepped off the ship, he felt every eye upon him. The first human to voluntarily enter space, the enemy living among them. Matriarch N had arranged a public ceremony. Thousands have gathered to witness Jake's formal acceptance into the royal household. He stood on a raised platform while the matriarch spoke to her people. The translator in his ear rendered her speech. This human saved Princess when he could have let her die. He protected her when he could have used her as a hostage. He chose mercy when his own commanders ordered him to abandon her. Today, I invoke and name him Royal Guardian. Let all know that Jake now stands under my protection. The crowd's reaction was mixed. Some lights flashed with colors Jake had learned meant approval. Others pulsed with anger and disgust. Many simply stared at him with obvious confusion. Why was a human here? Why was the matriarch protecting him? The ceremony ended. Jake was led to his quarters in the palace. The rooms were large and comfortable but clearly designed for bodies. The furniture was wrong sizes. The doors were oddly shaped. Everything reminded him that he did not belong here. Princess visited him that evening. She brought books and teaching aids to help him learn her language. They sat together while she patiently corrected his pronunciation. Sometimes she would giggle at his mistakes, her lights flickering with amusement. It was strange to think they had been enemies just weeks ago. Days turned into weeks. Jake established a routine. Mornings were spent learning culture and language from tutors the matriarch assigned. Afternoons belonged too. He helped with her studies and played games that children enjoyed. Evenings he spent alone, writing messages to his family on Earth. His messages were screened before being sent. Earth's response messages were screened as well, but it was still contact with home. His mother wrote that she was proud of him but missed him terribly. His father said nothing in words, but Jake could read the emotion in the short, careful sentences. Commander Lisa Grant sent a single message. "You crazy fool, I hope you know what you're doing." So did Jake. The people's reaction to his presence was complicated. Some citizens came to see him out of curiosity. They wanted to look at the human who saved their princess. They asked careful questions through translators. What was Earth like? Did humans really eat plants? Why did he only have 2 arms instead of 6? But others made their hatred clear. Jake received death threats daily. When he walked through the palace grounds some would turn away in disgust. Guards had to be posted outside his quarters after someone tried to break in one night. The matriarch worked tirelessly for peace. She opened back-channel communications with Earth. She made speeches about human honor and mercy. She used Jake's presence as proof that coexistence was possible, but progress was slow. Both sides had been fighting for so long that peace seemed like weakness. 3 months after Jake arrived on Aura, the matriarch arranged a public ceremony in the capital city. She would formally present Jake to the civilian population and announce the beginning of peace negotiations with Earth. Thousands would attend. The event would be broadcast across the entire empire. Jake dressed in formal clothes that the palace had made for him. They were an odd mix of human and styles. Princess came to inspect him before the ceremony. She had grown in the months since the battle. Her injured limbs had healed completely. She spoke English much better now. "You look good," she said with a child's honesty, "maybe a little scared." "I'm a little scared," Jake admitted. "Don't be. Mother will keep you safe. I will keep you safe too." Jake smiled at that, a child promising to protect him. "I know you will." They traveled to the city center in the matriarch's transport. Crowds lined the streets, held back by security barriers. Some waved ceremonial banners. Others shouted things Jake was glad he could not fully understand. The ceremony took place in a massive plaza surrounded by crystal towers. A stage had been erected where the matriarch would speak. Jake and were to stand beside her, symbols of the peace she was trying to build. Matriarch N began her speech. Jake stood quietly, trying to look calm despite the thousands of eyes watching him. Held his hand, her small limb wrapped around his fingers. The matriarch was speaking about the future, about trade and cultural exchange, about ending the cycle of violence. The crowd listened with mixed reactions. Some seemed receptive, others were clearly angry. Then everything went wrong. Jake saw the weapon being raised before his conscious mind registered the threat. 3 in the crowd, their lights flashing with hate colors. Energy weapons pointed at the stage. At him. Jake moved without thinking. He grabbed and turned his body to shield her. The energy blast hit him in the back with tremendous force. Pain exploded through his body. He fell forward, still holding the princess. More blasts followed. Security forces were responding but not fast enough. The attackers kept firing. Jake felt another impact in his shoulder, then another in his leg. But he kept his body between the weapons and time seemed to slow down. Jake heard screaming. He heard the matriarch's enraged shout. He heard weapons fire as guards eliminated the attackers. But all of it sounded distant, like it was happening underwater. Jake's vision was fading. His body felt heavy and cold. He had been shot multiple times. He was dying, but was underneath him, protected by his body. She was safe. That was what mattered. Hands pulled him off the princess. He heard Matriarch N's voice giving urgent commands. Medical teams surrounded him. They were doing something to his wounds, but he could not feel it anymore. His face appeared above him. She was crying, her lights pulsing with distress colors. Jake, no, please don't die, please. Jake tried to speak but could not find the words. He wanted to tell her it was okay, that this was what guardians did. They protected those in their care no matter the cost. Then everything went black. Jake woke up in a medical facility. His entire body hurt with a deep, throbbing pain. Machines beeped around him. Doctors moved back and forth, checking monitors and adjusting equipment. Matriarch N sat beside his bed. When she saw his eyes open, relief crossed her features. You live. The doctors said it was uncertain, but you survived. Jake's throat was dry. He managed to croak out a single word. She is safe. You protected her completely. She was not harmed. Jake closed his eyes. Good, that was good. The attackers were militants who opposed peace, the matriarch continued. They wanted to kill you and prove that humans could not be trusted, but they failed. And in failing, they proved the opposite of what they intended. Jake did not understand. N explained. The entire empire saw what happened. They saw you shield my daughter with your body. They saw you take multiple energy blasts that should have killed you. They saw a human sacrifice himself to protect a child. The matriarch's voice was thick with emotion. You saved my daughter twice now, and this time millions watched it happen. Public opinion has shifted dramatically. Citizens who opposed peace are now demanding it. They have seen human courage and honor with their own eyes. They cannot deny it. Over the following weeks, Jake recovered slowly. The energy weapons had done serious damage, but medical technology was advanced. They repaired his injuries with treatments that had no human equivalent. Princess visited him every day. She would sit beside his bed and tell him about her day. Sometimes she just held his hand, her lights pulsing with relief that he was still alive. The bond between them had grown stronger through near tragedy. Messages from Earth flooded in. His family sent tearful videos. Commander Grant wrote that he was a fool but also a hero. The human government formally commended his actions and opened full diplomatic relations with the empire. The peace summit that Matriarch N had been planning moved forward with new urgency. Both sides recognized that the momentum created by Jake's sacrifice could not be wasted. Negotiations began in earnest. 2 months after the attack, Jake was well enough to attend the summit on Sanctuary Station. He walked with a slight limp now, a permanent reminder of the energy blasts, but he was alive and mobile. The same council chamber where he had once faced judgment now hosted peace talks. Human delegates sat across from representatives. Ambassador Helen Cross led the human side. Matriarch N led the side. And in a place of honor between them sat Jake and Princess. The negotiations were long and difficult. Decades of war could not be undone quickly, but progress was made. Prisoner exchanges were agreed upon. Demilitarized zones were established. Trade agreements were drafted. Cultural exchange programs were proposed. And at the center of it all was a simple truth that no one could deny. A human had chosen to protect a child. Twice. At great personal cost. That act of courage and compassion had opened a door that both species thought was closed forever. The summit concluded with a formal treaty. Both sides agreed to immediate ceasefire. Both committed to ongoing peace negotiations. Both acknowledged that years of work remained to truly end the conflict, but they were taking the first steps. After the treaty signing, Earth offered to bring Jake home. He would return as a hero. Medals and honors waited for him. He could resume his life as a human among humans. But Princess asked him to stay. "Until I am grown," she said in her now excellent English. "Until I no longer need a guardian, please stay with me." Jake looked at the young who had changed his entire life. He thought about the fragile peace that still needed nurturing. He thought about being a bridge between two species who were just learning to understand each other. "I'll stay," he said. And so Jake remained on Ara. He became more than a guardian. He became an ambassador in everything but title. He traveled between human and worlds. He spoke to audiences of both species about what he had learned. He told them that every species was capable of both cruelty and kindness. That what mattered was the choice individuals made when it counted. That peace was not built by governments alone, but by people choosing to see the humanity in those who seemed most different. Years passed. The war ended officially. Trade routes opened. Cultural exchanges became common. Human students studied on worlds. Artists exhibited on Earth. The impossible became normal. Jake watched it all with quiet pride. He had not ended the war alone. Matriarch N, Ambassador Cross, and thousands of others on both sides had worked tirelessly for peace. But he had been the spark. The small act of compassion that showed both species they could be more than enemies. Princess grew into a wise and compassionate leader. When she eventually took her mother's place as matriarch, she would rule with the lessons Jake had taught her. That strength meant protecting the weak. That honor meant choosing right over easy. That courage meant standing between danger and those you care for, no matter the cost. One evening, Jake stood on a palace balcony overlooking the Crystal City. Human ships and vessels shared the sky above in peaceful formation, a sight that would have been impossible just years before. Now a young adult joined him. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked. "Saving me that day, everything that came after." Jake thought about the question seriously. He thought about his life on Earth that he had left behind, the career he never finished, the family he saw only through video calls, the simple human experiences he had sacrificed. Then he thought about the peace that now existed between two species, the lives saved because war had ended, the children on both sides who would grow up without fear of the enemy, all because one medic had chosen not to leave an injured child to die. He looked at and smiled, not for a second. They stood together in comfortable silence, human and guardian and princess, watching the peaceful sky. In the distance, shuttles traveled between worlds that were no longer at war. Families moved freely across space that had once been a. Children played together without knowing they were supposed to be enemies. Peace had come. Not from grand gestures or political treaties alone, though those had been necessary. Peace had come from small acts of courage, from one person choosing to protect a child, even when that child was supposed to be the enemy. Sometimes that was all it took to change everything.